unless you have another player that I'm going to talk about, they probably are the ones you're thinking of dropping. And like you said, I don't disagree with that. I think, I have Kako and Hughes in one league. I have each individually in other leagues, and they're the lowest common denominator for me too. And especially with a guy like Hughes, who's a center, he's pretty replaceable, to be honest. And especially when you've seen guys like Horvat get dropped. I'd rather have Horvat over Hughes at the moment. And when you watch Hughes, honestly, Hughes doesn't look that good right now. He's making good... He's very frustrating to watch. Good plays and also very bad plays where you can tell that he's a rookie. Kako has looked good. Of course, the Rangers haven't played in a while. And he's been practicing, and the coaches, still praise him and everything in practice. So I still think that they think highly of him. But I don't see either one of them really taking over opportunities from other people at the moment, as opposed to, like you were saying, Olofsson already has those opportunities. Okay, moving into my next one here. Philadelphia looks really, really good through 2 games. I mean, according to a lot...
Except for Voracek, apparently.
Except for Voracek, of course. And Ghost, who has fully embraced spooky season and disappeared and turned into a real ghost. Again, lovely. I mean, I thought he was a steal at like 11th round, 12th round, and here I am still regretting he's on my roster. We'll see. Hopefully that changes. Again, yet again. This is 2 years in a row now. I love it. And I wonder where I'll take him next year. 17th round, and I'll still hate it. Anyways, Philadelphia looks fantastic. Their expected goals for is at like 64%, which is nuts. I mean, that is like elite. You are probably a favorite to get the President's Trophy sort of numbers. So they look really, really good. So you've got to give credit to the coaching staff there, which I found out yesterday is an elite coaching staff. They've got 3 head coaches on there. It's Mike Yeo, Blaine Vigneault, and Michel Therrien. That's 3 head coaches on the bench, which is insane. I mean, of course, there's question marks as to whether Yeo or Therrien is good enough to be a head coach, but I think they are, and they've done it before, so that's a lot of knowledge on the bench. And so that, I think,
still don't like the
has
Hayes
a lot
first
to do with
line
it.
stuff, but whatever.
I don't know. So I didn't like it, but when I watched the game yesterday, it was kind of interesting. That first line played really well. Maybe not as offensive as you would have expected from, a Giroux and Voracek line. But then a lot of points are coming off of that Couturier line with Lindblom and Konechny. It's clicking really well. And so for whatever it's worth, as far as like for fantasy, obviously it sucks. But for real life, I actually really liked that duality of the Couturier line and the Kevin Hayes line. I liked a lot how they complement each other and kind of made life living hell for the opponent. So that's something to watch. And I think that this is one of those things sometimes where you have to actually merge fantasy life and real life and say, well, look, yeah, it sucks for fantasy, but in real life, for whatever reason, it's really working.
I don't like the power play.
Yeah, me neither. Okay, that's the one I was like...
I would still put Hayes on top power play, but not Hayes, Couturier.
Yeah,
but
agreed.
Whatever. I'm still allowed not to like Philly, just in general. Sorry, Philly.
Of course. I mean, I don't like the Devils. I'm allowed to not like the
Devils. I remember when I really finally started paying attention to hockey, it was the Flyers just beating the Islanders every single time they played. And I've never liked the Flyers since.
I mean, to be fair, back then, everyone beat the Isles.
Yeah, but I think the Flyers had something like a 3-season-in-a-row streak. Something like the Rangers losing to the Islanders.
I don't want to talk. Can we go on to the next one, please? I don't like where this is going.
All right, next up. I think that James Reimer... You have to consider him actually challenging Mrazek at this point. He's looked really good in the showings that we've seen so far. I'm hoping that he'll start on Friday. We actually picked him up in one of our leagues, our shared league in the couple, the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League. Oh, I got that right on the first try. Wow. Anyway, so we picked him up there in the hopes that he will play on Friday, and with the thought that maybe he could look into more of a split start role for a while and eventually take starting role over from Mrazek, but we'll see. The issue I have a little bit with Reimer is he's historically never really done well when he gets a ton of volume. So I think you wouldn't want to see him get many more than 45 starts or so, if that history is to be repeated, but we'll see what he can do with that. I do think, I'm not saying rush out and pick him up. If he does wind up playing on Friday, he might be a good option for a spot start. But he's definitely somebody to keep an eye on.
I don't completely disagree, but I think that saying he's going to challenge for the role is a little bit too much for right now. I'd say right now my take on it is I think it's now more of a shot that he split starts with Mrazek than that he really steals a starting role.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think that the first thing that'll happen is he'll get to split starts, and then he'll have the opportunity to challenge for the starting role if he continues to play better.
Yeah. Okay. I can get behind that. And it's only fitting to end my last one here with the other spectrum of shooting percentage, talking about the bad teams. Now, this one was kind of shocking to me. I mean, this one is not. The lowest team in shooting percentage is Arizona at 1.5% through 2 games. That one, not surprising at all, given how terrible they were at putting the puck in the back of the net last year. Great to see that it's continued. Hope you love Clayton Keller on your team. So, the one that was most surprising, though, was a team who's gone through 4 games, and it's the Sharks, who are shooting at a whopping 3.9% at all strengths. At all strengths, including the power play, the Sharks have shot at only 3.9%. Now, to give you some context, the next worst, because Arizona doesn't count in this because for whatever reason they genuinely don't like putting the puck in the back of the net. The next worst is Columbus. And through 3 games, their shooting percentage at all strengths is 6.8%. Which is pretty insane to be 3% lower than Columbus at this point through more games played. So there's truly some alarming trends for the Sharks, and the fact that they needed to put Patrick Marleau on the top line.
That's a weird idea.
Weird, bad idea that I don't really know what it solves.
Weird and bad.
It just makes alarm bells go off in my head thinking, what is going on there? They've lost the plot and they're trying to solve it with old people. I don't know. I'm not going to ring the alarms yet on the Sharks, but we're getting close. We're getting close to being able to say something is really, really wrong here, and they need to figure it out. Maybe it has to do with not having a guy who shot 40% over his career average last year. That might be it. Maybe they're missing that guy, Joe Pavelski. But who knows? I think it's more than that. I don't think it's as simple as saying it's just Joe Pavelski.
Although Joe Pavelski, it is funny when he left that team. I swear everybody thought him leaving the Sharks made everybody in the team better.
Yep.
Turns out not so much so far.
Yeah. Okay, how about you take us into your last one here, which,
all right,
funny enough, also involves the Sharks.
Of course it does. Don't drop Timo Meier. Stop. Yep. Just stop dropping Timo Meier. I got a notification saying 2,000 teams or something dropped Timo Meier, and I was like, what is happening? Even if these are like 18 leagues, you don't drop Timo Meier yet. Yeah. It's 4 games in. Let's pump the brakes a little bit. I mean, they haven't even had Kane. I mean, Kane's not the biggest factor, but he is a factor. He's a good forward. They didn't have Kane for three of the games. I know they don't play on the same line, but at least that gives you some offensive threat. It'll give you hopefully more offensive zone draws, face-offs, because you'll have another player that'll put the puck on net, even if the goalie stops it.
Yep.
So, yeah, relax a bit. I get the Voracek's been dropped a lot as well. For some reason, if you have to drop somebody, I would definitely drop Voracek over Meier. I can't believe the Meier drops are happening. But don't drop Voracek either. Let's just be patient. Calm down a little bit.
It's like between 2 and 4 games for every team. It is way too early for these people. And again, we say this on every episode now, but it's so important to say week 1 of being patient and just hold out and wait a little bit. We can't stress enough how much you would most likely regret dropping, these big name guys, just because there's a hot hand out there and they've played 2 games. Okay, moving into the schedule for the weekend. So similar to the week preview schedule, we're going to talk about the weekend, and we'll give you teams with good matchups, teams with bad matchups, and teams that play both off days, which are Friday and Sunday, which I'll tell you right now is nobody. So there you go. That nobody has a lovely off-night schedule of Friday and Sunday.
14 games on Saturday.
Yeah.
That is every team except for 3.
Yep. Wow, good math. I couldn't have done that in my head.
I only knew because I looked at it beforehand.
Cheater. Teams with good matchups are going to be Carolina, who plays at home versus the Islanders, and then back-to-back at home versus Columbus, who is also tired, so at least there's that. Vegas has a pretty easy schedule in which they get at home against Calgary. Not exactly an easy game, but then they get the easiest game of all. They get at Los Angeles back-to-back, but Los Angeles is also tired. So exactly what happened last night with Vancouver, except they're away.
So
but
nice
that means they might get quick in net, which means they might score 10 goals. Who knows? And then there's Pittsburgh, who plays at home versus Minnesota, and then at Winnipeg back-to-back, and Winnipeg is tired there. Teams with bad matchups have to be the Los Angeles Kings, because anytime they have a back-to-back, you have to assume the Quick is going to play one of those games, and they're going to get crushed. So they're going to play versus Nashville at home, and then they're going to play versus the Golden Knights, and the Golden Knights are tired, and that's also a back-to-back game. Then the Islanders have a pretty tough schedule going in against one hot team and one team that I think should be doing better than they are. They play at Carolina, and then they fly back home and play versus Florida back-to-back, and Florida is also tired there. Now, I did mention that neither
sludge games this weekend.
A bunch of sludge, a lot of tired versus tired games this weekend. I would figure that there's going to be a lot of goals to be had. And then I know I said that no teams play off nights, which are Friday and Sunday this week. But the move, in my opinion, is if you have the starts, or if you have the ads at least, and the spot, my opinion would be the move is to pick up someone for Friday and then someone also for Sunday. That's probably the smartest thing you can do if you have the ads. If you don't, then make it work. I would rather have someone on Sunday, though, because there's so many sludge games, than someone on a Friday.
There's not a ton of games on Friday to begin with, so even finding... I struggled to even find any recommendations for Friday. I did wind up with a couple that I like, but we'll see.
Yeah, well, why don't you move into some of those?
Sure. The first one that I like for Friday is Jacob Silfverberg. He's a right wing, he's 9% right now, but he's getting pretty good ice time at 17 minutes. He'll be playing against the Blue Jackets, so that's a good matchup. But he's going to be tired. Again, not a ton of options on Friday, but if you wanted to look at the week coming, Anaheim also plays all 4 off nights. So you can hold him for the next week if you want to. He's got top power play. He's playing with, I think he's playing on the second line with Lundstrom and Raquel. So that's actually probably closer to the first line at this point. And against Columbus, I'd take those. I'd take pretty much anybody against Columbus. So Silfverberg, 9%, going to be available in a lot of leagues. He shoots the puck. He's like always an okay guy. He always seems to be like a guy that you can pick up for a last-second ad if you want to have a shot at getting some points. But he's never really a season-long hold.
Never. I feel like every year he has this stretch where people all of a sudden freak out, and he has like a 2 or 3 game stretch where he's good, and everyone wants to hold on to him. He's like that guy that people want to hold on to, and then they finally realize, no, he's never worth it.
Aaron Ekblad.
Yeah, Aaron Ekblad too. That's another guy. Although I'm happy with him so far in blocks leagues.
In blocks leagues, fine, but like in standard leagues, he always seems to go overdrafted and underproduce. By underproduce, I mean produce exactly as expected, and somehow that's not what people wanted. I don't know.
Yeah, they always think, this is the breakout year for him. He's the Carolina Hurricanes. Well, the ones that didn't cheat. Actually, no, he's the Arizona Coyotes of fantasy defensemen.
Yep.
This is his year. Yep. But it's not. Okay, my first one here is going to be Nick Foligno, center left wing, 13% owned. I just like what he's doing from a peripheral standpoint. It's just kind of a smart play, in my opinion. If you want to get some peripherals, I also like the center left wing. It opens up some opportunities there. And yeah, there's really not... I don't like Columbus. I don't really like him for a point upside sort of thing, but I do like him just from a peripheral side. The other guy I like is Riley Smith, who honestly is kind of a pickup candidate in general. Right wing, 50% owned. Vegas has a good schedule, like I mentioned, and especially because you can pick him up for that Sunday day, which is going to be away against Los Angeles, and both teams are going to be tired. There's going to be an opportunity for points, and Smith is getting more and more minutes as the games kind of progress. They're trusting him with more, which is a good sign. So Riley Smith to me is one of my top options as a streamer this weekend if he's available in your league.
Yep. Agree with that. My next one, we already mentioned, James Reimer, 8%.
Yep.
We, as I mentioned, picked him up already in hopes that he'll play Friday. But there's so many back-to-backs that even if he doesn't, hopefully one of our other goalies will not play Saturday, and we can slot him in there. So the idea will be, if you can, wait and see which he will be projected for. They actually may have already, by the time this is aired, they probably projected him for one or the other game. He's got a 940 so far. Obviously, it's a little early to really rely on that, but he's either going to get the Islanders or the Blue Jackets, so pretty good. And yeah, there's not a lot else to say. He's playing well and has a good matchup, and it's early in the season, and Reimer tends to do better when he doesn't have a lot of volume, and he can't have a lot of volume because it's still early in the season. So I like the idea of him hopefully on Friday, possibly on Saturday, if you have the room on Saturday.
I should correct that for a quick second, just so people get confused. Brandon's not talking about volume in terms of saves, given he had 50 the other night. More so just volume and starts.
Yeah. I said volume? What was I talking about volume?
Okay, my next one here is going to be defenseman and Jacob Slavin at 24% owned. I can't stress this enough that Jacob Slavin right now is a hot hand. I would not advocate as a long-term ad for him. This is the same thing happened last year, and eventually he was waiver wire again. He goes through these kind of moments where he's doing well, and right now Carolina in general is in a peak moment for them. Their expected goals for is really, really high. They look elite. But I think that as this starts to normalize, one of the people that will start to fall off the most is going to be most likely Jacob Slavin. He's a minute cruncher for Carolina. But for this weekend alone, I like him a lot, especially like you said, the schedule is great in the Islanders and Columbus. He's 24% owned. There's a chance that he's not available in your league if it's sharp. A lot of people have been picking him up. But the thing is that also, if you're in a sharp league, there's a potential that someone hasn't picked him up because of exactly what I said, in which he's not a good long-term option. He's a good short-term option. So if you need someone for blocks this weekend and potentially some point upside on defense, my favorite one would definitely be Jacob Slavin.
Yeah, I would like to reiterate that we are not calling him a long-term ad. I feel like there's been a lot of that lately. I've seen a lot of people thinking Slavin is somebody you can add for the rest of the season. I don't think so. Yeah, he's doing well lately, but he's not in a position to do well. And he doesn't play on the power play at all. So
yeah,
bear that in mind. All right, my next one, we also mentioned on Monday, and that turned out pretty well if you listened to me then.
Let's go.
Yep.
Left wing, right wing, 10% owned. He's likely to, yes, LA has a bad matchup, technically. But he's probably going to wind up playing against Malcolm Subban at home. So, I like that. I like the opportunity of Kovalchuk playing against one of the worst. Okay, that might be one of the not so good backups in the league
Quick
right now.
is now the holder of that.
Yeah, probably yeah. So they're going to be tired, but it's a sludge matchup. It's Malcolm Subban. It's at home. He's been playing. He played 19 minutes in one of the games. He's averaged 16 minutes, 45 seconds time on ice, way up from last season. Yeah, I have him in 3 leagues now, so I'm chomping down a bit on him. I don't know if he's a guy I'm going to hang on long term, but I'll ride it out until some deployment changes. But as long as he's getting good ice time and he's got top power play, yeah, I'll let him hang out.
Yeah, I don't hate that. And like we said, they're both tired. So if you get a Malcolm Subban versus Jonathan Quick matchup, there's going to be a lot of goals most likely. So that I would get in on Ilya Kovalchuk. I don't hate that, actually. And like you said, the minutes are going up. Now, I have a 0% own guy here.
No.
It's not bad. It's Dominic
I'm
Simone.
sure it's bad. I don't even want to hear it.
Dominic Simone. Left wing, right wing.
Yeah.
He's playing the top right wing spot for next to Crosby. You know, if you're in a really, really deep league, I mean, very, very deep, Dominic Simone is a good points upside option since he's playing with Crosby. And like I said, I like Pittsburgh's matchups. They play at home versus Minnesota and then away at Winnipeg, but both teams are tired, so a little bit of a sludge match. So that should be good for him, especially if you can keep that top spot next to Crosby. Of course, no power play time, but you know, if you're aiming for 0% owned guys, you're probably in a deep enough league where it's kind of hard to find guys getting points and with good deployment. And so Dominic Simone is the guy who stands out to me as the best kind of deployment option, and the fact that he's left wing, right wing is fantastic because that makes it more likely that if for whatever reason you have a spot on Saturday, then you can fit him in.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. We've seen Simone actually pull things off with Crosby before as well, so not unheard of. This is not uncharted territory. All right, my last one is also on the Pens. Brandon Tanev. Left wing, right wing, 10% owned. This is a hits league pickup. But we all know that Pittsburgh's injuries are... there's a lot of them. You know, we got Hornquist, who's a game time decision tonight, which is Thursday night. But we've got Malkin out long term now. We've got Galchenyuk on IR. There's opportunity to be had. Tanev is going to be playing second line, which he actually was prior, but now his ice time is going to go up, as we've seen it go up. He has now played 16:43 in his last game, and guess what happened? He got 9 hits and 2 blocks.
Yep.
He's actually gotten at least 2 blocks in every Pens game. So if you're in a hits and blocks league and you're looking for a guy, you actually might be able to hold him on a little bit longer term because he is throwing the body hugely this season, and he did the same last season. So he's a good hits, good blocks. He's got better deployment than he did last season, so we're going to see more shots out of him, even though he's not the most offensive guy in the world. So he actually fits that sort of, you know, William Carrier, Matt Martin, Ryan Reeves banger type pretty well. Not a ton of pims out of him, but everything else, yeah, his numbers look good, to say the least, for banger leagues.
Okay, it fits me. I don't hate it that much. Still kind of hate it, but don't hate it.
No, I love it.
Much.
I love Tanev. If I needed the hits, oh my god, I'd pick him up now.
So there you go. That is the episode. Big weekend. There's a lot of things we can learn. Every team pretty much is playing Saturday, and there's going to be, we'll have a lot of teams that will have played 5 games by the time we record our Monday episode. So we're excited to see what goes down. So be sure to be patient this weekend. Don't chase your matchups too much for the sake of dropping, a Voracek or a Timo Meier. And other than that, thank you for listening, and we will see you on Monday for our week preview episode.
Yep. Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Fantasy Hockey Podcast, brought to you by myself and my co-host, Brandon Stakenborg. If you liked this episode or others, please leave us a review. It's the #1 way to help the podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, @FantasyHockeyPD. Join our Fantasy Hockey Discord channel, play in a listener league with us by becoming a patron, and check out all our tools on FantasyHockeyPodcast.com. All research courtesy of Dauber, Daily Faceoff, Hockey Reference, Hockey Viz, Natural Stat Trick, Evolving Hockey, and RotoWire. Intro song is by Avicii, and the outro is by Deadmau5. Thanks again for listening, and we'll catch you next time. Fantasy Hockey Podcast. It's an unsustainable Wednesday episode, the first one of the year. I'm your host, Gambi, with my co-host, Brandon, and if you've never tuned in to an unsustainable Wednesday episode, let me break down exactly how it goes. So what we do is we take a look at the hottest and coldest players and give you a feel for whether that's sustainable or not. So let's say someone's doing really, really well. Are they actually going to sustain that heat, or are they going to fall back down to earth? And the same for the other side. If someone's playing poorly, they're maybe in a slump, we try to tell you, look, here's why we think the slump will continue or why it will not. So that's the very simple explanation of how we do this. It's a little bit more stats driven than our other episodes, so we get into a little bit to really give you reasonings as to why someone may break out of their slump or stay in their slump. But ultimately, it's really useful for helping you gauge whether to make a pickup or not, because usually when you're in the middle of thinking about making a pickup, you don't know if it's just a hot hand effect or not. And so the whole point of this episode is to guide you in the right direction.
Yeah, that's right. And I typically will go over at least partial of last week's suggestions that we made to see if we're on track or not. I think for this season, we used to go over every single pick, but I think for this season we'll go over only the ones where we were either way off or right on, as opposed to kind of boringly going through a bunch of names you heard last week. But since there obviously is no Unsustainable Wednesday from last week, we're just going to jump right into this week's unsustainable calls. And the first one I have on my list is a player that's been showing up quite a bit. It's probably one of the biggest names right now in Cody Ceci.
Yep.
He's playing top pairing with Morgan Riley over in Toronto. If you haven't been paying attention, Toronto's been scoring a lot of goals, which is unsurprising, as I think they were probably the highest projected goals for team in the league. Maybe Tampa, but I think it was Toronto for most analysts. Cody Ceci, all right, he's getting pretty good ice time. He's getting about 22 minutes and change, which is around what we'd see from him when he was in Ottawa. Obviously, a bit of a different role now. They're playing him with Riley, a little bit more offensive. He's only getting about 51% offensive zone starts, which is essentially half and half. They're basically playing him wherever, that pairing, which is a good sign for him as a player, I guess, how Toronto's treating him as both responsible in his own end and at least effective enough offensively. However, he has 3 points in 4 games, and that's why he's starting to make some tongues wag. He also puts up decent peripherals, especially in the blocks category, but I think it's getting a little overblown here. He plays literally no power play, and he never will. There's 3 other defensemen in front of him, and that's possibly even more depending on who else shows up on that right side.
I think Babcock would play on the power play before he does.
Right? Yeah. Like Tyson Barrie, Morgan Riley, and Jake Muzzin are all clearly ahead of him for power play time, and they're already, since only playing 1 defenseman on each power play unit. Actually, even if they're playing 2, it's going to be Muzzin on power play 2 anyway. So CC will not be getting you power play points, and we've said time and time again, that is how you get the majority of your points as a defenseman. If you're not on the power play, you're looking at typically like a 30% difference on the power play. It's very, very tough to break through a 40-point barrier even if you have no power play time. So, with the idea of him getting no power play, despite his strong start, I think something like a 30 to 35-point season is what you can realistically expect out of him, and he's going to get you okay peripherals. He's not a big shot guy, despite the fact he's come out with... Actually, he's still not shooting right now, 4 shots in 4 games. So he's not going to get you a ton of shots. He's going to get you okay hits and okay blocks. Decent, I guess. But I still think Muzzin is the better option on the same team here if you wanted to stay with Toronto for some reason.
I actually think CC reminds me a little bit of Muzzin last year when Muzzin came over to the team and he was top pairing.
Yeah, but Muzzin was even in a better position last year than CC is because he was getting power play too.